Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyillah wa ba'd. To proceed, resuming and continuing with Nooniya by Al-Qahtani, rahmatullahi alayh, where we resume to a new discussion, or we resume from where we left off to a new discussion. Today is al-ghusl wa mujibatuh. Ghusl and what obliges it, inshallah. So with no further delay, we ask the brother to continue reading. تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك وأنعم على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم بارك لنا في شيخنا وأطل عمره في عافية وحسن عمل وزده علما وتوفيقا والحاضرين والسامعين. قال الناظم رحمه الله: والغسل فرض من 3 أوجه: دفق المني وحيضة النسوان، إنزاله في نومة أو يقظة، حالان للتطهير موجبتان، وتطهر الزوجين فرض واجب عند الجماع إذا التقى الفرجان، فكلاهما إن أنزلا أو أكسلا فهما بحكم الشرع يغتسلان، واغسل إذا أمذيت فرجك كله، والأنثيان فليس يفترضان، والحيض والنفساء أصل واحد عند انقطاع الدم يغتسلان، وإذا أعادت بعد شهرين الدماء تلك استحاضة بعد ذي الشهران، فلتغتسل لصلاتها وصيامها، والمستحاضة دهرها نصفان، فالنصف تترك صومها وصلاتها، ودم المحيض وغيره لونان، وإذا صفى منها وأشرق لونه فصلاتها والصوم مفترضان، تقضي الصيام ولا تعيد صلاتها، إن الصلاة تعود كل زمان، فالشرع والقرآن قد حكما به بين النساء فليس يطرحان، ومتى ترى النفساء طهرا تغتسل أولى فغاية طهرها شهران، مس النساء على الرجال محرم، حرث السباخ خسارة الحرثان، لا تلق ربك سارقا أو خائنا أو شاربا أو ظالما أو زاني، قل إن رجم الزانيين كليهما فرض إذا زنيا على الإحصان، والرجم في القرآن فرض لازم للمحصنين ويجلد البكران، والخمر يحرم بيعها وشراؤها، سيان ذلك عندنا سيان، في الشرع والقرآن حرم شربها، وكلاهما لا شك متبعان. والغسل فرض من 3 أوجه: دفق المني وحيضة النسوان. And ghusl is obligatory for 3 reasons: ejaculation of semen and menstruation of women.
طيب, so the topic of al-ghusl. First we want to understand this wording al-ghusl. Al-ghusl, it is pronounced here with the dhamma and the ghain. Al-ghuslu. And we also have a word al-ghaslu, and we have al-ghislu. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, in his book Tahdhib al-Asma wal-Lughat, he gives the differences of these wordings in terms of the vowels. Al-ghusl, which is today's topic, it is al-ightisal, taking the bath. And al-ghasl is washing, merely, for example, washing your hands. And ghusl is a type of water or a particular way of washing the head with sidr. So what we're referring to today is al-ghusl. What are mujibat al-ghusl? And this word mujibat al-ghusl, things that make ghusl wajib, is a legislative term. You ask How do we come with the word mujibat al-ghusl? It's that which makes ghusl wajib. It is from a number of wordings. One wording where Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he said to Aisha, إني أريد أن أسألك عن شيء وإني أستحييك فقالت لا تستحي أن تسألني عما كنت سائلا عنه أمك التي ولدتك. He says, I want to ask you something, but I'm shy to ask you. He said, don't be shy to ask me something that you would be not shy from to ask your mother who gave you birth. فإنما أنا أمك, verily I'm your mother. قلت فما يوجب الغسل. So he said, what is the mujibat of ghusl? What makes ghusl wajib? This is the term that we got. So she said, على الخبير سقطت. You ever heard of that proverb? You landed on someone that knows the matter well. So there then she mentioned from the scenarios of where ghusl is wajib. So the author, he says, وَالْغُسْلُ فَرْضٌ مِّن ثَلَاثَةِ أَوْجُهٍ. That ghusl, it is wajib from three different angles. دَفْقُ الْمَنِيِّ, the release of fluid, of ejaculation that comes out of desire. مَاءٍ دَافِقٍ. Where do we get the word dafq? From Surah Tariq. Allah says, Ma'in dafiq. That's the one that breaks in terms of requires ghusl. It has to be ma'in dafiq. But a person, if he were to have fluid come out of him due to a sickness, due to merely just coming out without urge of it, then it is not from mujibat al-ghusl on the strongest view, except on the view of who? The Shafi'iyya Badish. The Shafi'is, it doesn't have to be ma'in dafiq. Any fluid of semen that comes out, whether it is of desire that comes out or illness, it requires to do ghusl. So for example, a person, he had this fluid come out of him, and then he did a bath, and then as he's coming out of the shower, something else comes out of him again. They're saying, okay, go back, you have to do another bath. He says, subhanAllah, it just came out, not out of ma'in dafiq. They said, no, you have to take another bath. So perhaps maybe repeat for the person. So the Malikis are saying, which are a lot of the other scholars, it has to be ma'in dafiq. And they say, why is it restricted to ma'in dafiq? Because that is where the desire usually lies. طيب, next one, وَحَيْضَةُ النِّسْوَانِ, and the menses of the woman. هذا كتبه الله على بنات آدم. Allah, the Prophet says, this has been decreed universally on the daughters of Adam. طيب. So let's go first to the mujib of hayd. That is by consensus. Because Allah mentions in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ قُلْ هُوَ أَذًى فَاعْتَزِلُوا النِّسَاءَ فِي الْمَحِيضِ. And Allah mentions, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوهُنَّ حَتَّى يَطْهُرْنَ. Do not go near to them until they become purified. And what does mean purify here? A purity of meaning no longer in the states of menses. When her cycle ends. فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَا. When they, this is the second one, take a bath. That is the second type of purification. And this is where it's intended here. So this is by consensus. This is by consensus. Everyone knows this, as there's a lot of hadith on this, where the Prophet ﷺ tells the woman to leave off praying, قدر الأيام التي كنت تحيضين فيها ثم اغتسلي وصلي. Then do ghusl and you pray afterwards. So no one would disagree that this is from the mujibat of ghusl. The next one that is kind of included in the first is intercourse, al-jima'. Regardless if fluid comes out from him or not. Because of the hadith of Bukhari and Muslim, إذا جلس بين شعبها الأربع. And basically has the act of intimacy, regardless, as it comes to some of the wordings of Muslim, وَلَوْ لَمْ يُنزِلْ. Even if nothing comes out from him or her, they both have to do ghusl. So that's regardless. That's separate on its own, mujibat al-ghusl. There was some sort of khilaf early on. Imam Nawawi mentions from some of the Sahabas that required that some fluid comes out and it occurs of ejaculation, and they say if it doesn't occur, then he doesn't have to go ghusl. But that khilaf no longer exists. And qarad al-khilaf, the Sahabas recanted from that opinion, and now they're all united as a consensus that just merely having the act of intercourse mandates upon both of them to do ghusl. All the other scenarios before was abrogated. Al-ma min al-ma. The Prophet said water is the cause for water. Meaning if there's no fluid that is released from you, there's no reason to take a bath. That hadith is abrogated. So no one comes and brings that hadith, says Muslim. Hadith is Muslim, brothers. Says abrogated. That's why we tell people when they're reading Bukhari Muslim, you can't just take every hadith, and you have to know which one's abrogated and what is not abrogated. What does it mean? Hadith and Quran, there's ayat in the Quran that are abrogated. You can't just pick up the Mus'haf and just read as what you want and give your own rulings. You will still require guidance. طيب, what's the next one that we're going to see, inshallah? Move on.
إنزاله في نومة أو يقظة حالان للتطهير موجبتان. Its ejaculation during sleep or wakefulness are two conditions that necessitate purification.
طيب. So, إنزاله في نومه أو يقظة, which is the fluid coming out as a wet dream, and that is regardless if it be a male or female. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by Salama, هل على المرأة الغسل إذا احتلمت? Is it upon a woman to do ghusl if she has a wet dream? He says, نعم إذا رأت الماء. Yes, if she sees the fluid. So, this is from the hadith. But there's scenarios to it. Al-ihtilam, wet dream, it's min alamat al-bulugh, brothers. It's from the signs of puberty. If a person has a wet dream, we say, khalas, you're baligh. You're at the age of puberty. Male or female. But they say the age that it could occur for a woman, some of them, a group of the ulama, and that's the majority, they say where it's considered for a woman is at the age of 9. Anything before that, they say it's not a sign of puberty. Because they say that a lot of them see that a woman, the most she can be at the age of puberty, at the age of 9. That if it were to occur prior to that, they say it's not counted. But some scholars said, regardless, it's counted. طيب, al-ihtilam, if it occurs where a person has the wet dream, recalls the dream, and sees the fluid when waking up, then he has to take a ghusl by the consensus of the scholars. The second scenario, if he has a wet dream, ihtilam, but doesn't see any fluid, he recalls the wet dream, but doesn't see any fluid, he doesn't have to do any ghusl. Also, this is, by some scholars have quoted a consensus. The third scenario, he sees the fluid, but he doesn't remember the wet dream. This is where the difference of opinion lies. This is the khilaf, brothers. What happens in this scenario? A group of the ulama sees as upon them to do ghusl because he could have the wet dream and forgotten. This is what they mention. Another opinion says, like Sheikh Baz, no, he should investigate in terms of if it is what he's certain that it's of semen that came out, regardless if he remembers the dream or not, he has to take a bath. Otherwise, he just has to do wudu and cleanse himself. And what happens if you're doubtful? That's another scenario is going to come. You don't know if it's what people refer to as medi, pre-ejaculation fluid, and semen of many. And the scholars differed greatly on that. We'll get to there. But let's go back. Another opinion says you don't have to take a bath if you don't remember the ihtilam, because the ruling is connected to the wet dream. Because he said it could have been released from your body without any ejaculation. And in that case, it doesn't require ghusl. Just having many coming out doesn't require ghusl. It has to be bima'in dafiq. Al-Khattabi, in his book Ma'alim al-Sunan, he quotes that Imam Ahmad says, أعجب إلي أن يغتسل إلا رجلا به إبردة. I see it better for a man to take a bath if he sees that case, unless it's a person, and due to the temperature in the room, fluid comes out from him, and certain sickness of a person, then in that scenario he doesn't have to. But he's just saying it's more preferred to me. And also he says, some of the ulama, وقال أكثر أهل العلم, he said the majority of the scholars said لا يجب عليه الاغتسال حتى يعلم أنه بلل المني الدافق. Majority of the ulama say in this case it's not wajib for him to do ghusl until he knows that this wetness, it is a mani that came out with desire of ejaculation. And a lot of the scholars see in this case it's still recommended to take a bath ihtiyatan, to be on the safe side. To be on the safe side. You can't go wrong. I say, MashaAllah, brother, take a bath to be on the safe side. كيف وقد قيل. How could you be at ease when it could be it, as they say? طيب. Another scenario that relates to this topic of ihtilam, if a person feels the urge of releasing fluid with the wet dream of seeing it, but doesn't actually release, They say in this scenario, there's no ghusl upon him. This is the stronger view. These rulings are important, brothers. And these rulings relate to ghusl. What about a scenario if he's doubtful? Is it many? Is it medi? I don't recall the dream. So some scholars say it depends. Some, like Sheikh bin Baz says, if he recalls that previously, prior to sleep, he was thinking about something that arouses his desire, and then woke up to see it, it is medi. Otherwise, they're saying it is mani. The next opinion that says, whenever you're doubtful, if it's mani or madi, the origin that is madi, and it doesn't take the ruling of mani. The origin is wudu, until proven otherwise, that you move to the next step, ghusl. That's a qaida. The origin, I just have to do wudu. You have to do ghusl. Where's your proof that I have to do ghusl? I'm not certain that is mani. Khalas. MashaAllah. No one can get you wrong in that scenario. For someone to tell you it is wajib for you to do ghusl, we tell them, where does it show that I'm certain that this is something that mandates upon me? If it doesn't, then origin, we cannot bind on someone to do ghusl in that case. And the proof that it has to come with an urge of desire is the narration that the Prophet says, إِذَا فَضَخَتِ الْمَاءِ خَرَجَ مِنْكَ بِشِدَّةٍ فَاغْتَسِلْ. Hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud. If the fluid comes out with strength, then take ghusl. Why is it? Because they say when it comes out with strength, it is a liquid from the whole body that requires a bath for the whole body. Otherwise, it just requires wudu. That's the wisdom a person takes a bath for many. Because they say it really comes out from the whole body. Tayyib. Let us understand, there's another discussion the scholars speak about from mujibat al-ghusl. That's not mentioned here. They say when embracing Islam, in the Islam al-kafir, whether it be kafir al-asli or al-murtad, an apostate, he comes back to Islam. He left Islam and he's come back. We're telling him, brother, okay, you have to do ghusl. Or he was never a Muslim and he just embraced Islam for the first time. The two opinions is it recommended, or is it just recommended, or is it wajib? They said there's only two opinions. Is it recommended, just recommended, or is it wajib? There's no third opinion that is not legislated, but it's strong. As they say, there's only two opinions from what we've seen so far. Allah alam. So a group of scholars, like the Hanbalis, they say it's wajib. The Prophet commanded a person to go and take a bath when he was about to embrace Islam. Let him go behind this ha'it, take a bath, and come back. And those scholars who say just recommended, they say there's so many Sahabas that embraced Islam and they were not commanded to take a bath and do ghusl. Every time a person wants to take shahad, you're going to go tell him to go take a bath. That's not mandatory. And also it's not convenient at times. But in terms of it being recommended, yes, there's a number of hadith. And there is an opinion that says, that's somewhat in between these two opinions, that say if he was in a state of janaba prior, if the kafir was in a state of janaba prior, then he has to do ghusl, wajib. Otherwise it's just recommended. Strong opinion, whether he was in janaba prior or whether he wasn't, is just still recommended by this. How many Sahabas the Prophet would embrace Islam, the Prophet would not inquire, and they would be in this state. The next mujibat al-ghusl, some have add, is concerning washing the dead body. Washing the dead body. But it's not necessarily included in this topic because it's not relating to the person himself, and it's relating to outside, the person that's living, not the dead person. They're saying. And those hadith have been questioned regarding its authenticity and also its meanings. So we'll leave that, inshallah. Next slide, hold on.
وتطهر الزوجين فرض واجب عند الجماع إذا التقى الفرجان. And the purification of the two spouses is a mandatory obligation during intercourse when the two private parts meet.
طيب. It comes here as well that we've taken already in the relation to intercourse and intimacy between the two spouses. Next line.
فكلاهما إن أنزلا أو أكسلا فهما بحكم الشرع يغتسلان. So both of them, whether they ejaculate or withhold, then they both must perform ghusl according to the Sharia.
Regardless, as fluid comes out or not. Go ahead.
واغسل إذا أمديت فرجك كله والأنثيان فليس يفترضان. And wash your private part thoroughly when you discharge medhi, pre-seminal fluid, and the testicles are not mandatory to wash.
طيب. So this comes a hadith of, is he washing every area of the private part when medhi comes out, or only one part where it was released? This is a discussion, and there's a hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud that mentions every part of it, with the testicles included. Next line, hold on.
والحيض والنفساء أصل واحد عند انقطاع الدم يغتسلان. And menstruation and lochia are of the same nature. When the bleeding stops, they must perform ghusl.
طيب, so now the topic of al-hayd wal-nifas, postpartum bleeding and the menstruation of a woman, they take one ruling together. All of the rulings, and you cannot divorce a woman who is on her menses or on postpartum bleeding. Also, leaving off the salat, not fasting. All of the rulings are the same. Aslun wahid. And this is by consensus. They quoted the consensus on that. They both take the same rulings. And they're both referred to as being the same in pure blood. عند انقطاع الدم يغتسلان. When do they do ghusl? In one of the two signs that appear. The first sign, everybody you know this? The first sign in the al-qassatu al-bayda. What is al-qassatu al-bayda? It's a sign of, some of them refer to as a clear liquid coming out of the woman that indicates that she's pure after her menses or after postpartum bleeding. Some women, it's their ada, it's their regular cycle to see that, and it's a sign for them. So it's like an appearance of a clear thread-like discharge called al-qassatu al-bayda. It's like a sign for her that she's pure and her menses has ended. And the second sign, dryness of the womb for 24 hours. Inqita' ad-dam for approximately 24 hours. And they say the sign of that is on her last check of the wipe, nothing is on her pad or that which she's identifying with. It's dryness of the womb, basically. And some others have added another sign, but they say, for example, where the blood were to turn the color of regular blood color of the vein. But these are the two standards. So which one has precedence? The first. For a woman that is a regular affair, to see that and wait for it. So we don't say to her, waitness of dryness of womb. We say, no, wait for number 1, thread-like discharge. But a woman that usually have al-qassatul bayda, what do we tell her to wait for? Dryness of the womb for 24 hours. Inqita' ad-dam. And this is regarding a woman that is at the end of a regular cycle. We're not talking about a woman that is still her cycle. She has usually a few more days. Her cycle usually lasts for 7 days. On the 3rd day, she's saying she had a dryness of the womb. We say, no. Your cycle usually lasts 7 days. You wait for your 7 days. Right? Because how many times a woman's period may stop for a short span and resume within those days? And she prayed, or perhaps was in that state, where she was not pure. طيب, move on.
وإذا أعادت بعد شهرين الدماء تلك استحاضة بعد ذي الشهران. And if she sees blood again after 2 months, that is considered irregular bleeding after those 2 months.
Yeah, so they say a duration of bleeding after which a woman is considered to have irregular bleeding. Istihada, a lot of them they say 30 days if it lasts, and a lot of them say if it occurs more than the most tara al-hayda, because they differ, the scholars. ما هو أكثر الحد? What is the most a woman's menstrual cycle can last for? The vast majority, the jumhur, say 15 days. 15 days. Most of the madhabs, they say 15 days. There is a rare opinion, I think ascribed to Uza'i, he says 17 days. We don't know opinion beyond that. They said to go beyond that, they usually refer to that as irregular bleeding. So a woman who has irregular bleeding, they'll say she'll take the standard that the most of her menses will be 15 days. After 15 days, she has to pray. She can't be out of the prayer and fasting for the whole month, in other words. I said there's no such scenario. Because in 1 month she has to be tahir, she has to be pure, and also on her menses. She can't be in a state of lacking purity throughout the whole month. طيب, let's continue, inshallah. This topic of istihada, we're going to explain that this all goes back to how do you determine sin al-hayd? What is the age for menses, firstly? When does it start? Some scholars have said the earliest a woman can get her menses is 9 years age. Some have said that. And some said there's no specific age for it. The majority are saying 9. That's why they say if a woman reaches the age of 9, she should be wearing her hijab. Sheikh Ahmed Najmi said a woman should be wearing her hijab at the age of 9. Yeah. So Ibn Taymiyyah says, whether a woman is under the age of 9 or above the age of 50, if she goes through her menses, it takes the ruling of menses. Regardless. Because he said Allah and His Messenger did not restrict it to an age. And that's the opinion of who? Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, brothers. His opinions are quite heavy. طيب, Shaykh Albani, as a group of our contemporary ulama, they said there's no regular, the most the cycle could last, and the least of it. He said a woman could have a menses for half a day. It's possible. It can be, it could be more than that, he says. But it cannot last forever, he says. It can't go like more than like for a whole month. But we don't know the exact way we can say this is only 15 days or this. But generally, in terms of waqi', brothers. Some said, when you take these opinions and say that there's no most for a cycle a woman can go, said in reality, a woman's period doesn't go beyond 15 days or the most 17 days. So anything beyond that is irregular bleeding. Some of the ulama like Al-Uthaymin, he says, وقد بلغني أن من النساء من تأتيها الحيضة شهرا كاملا وتطهر 3 أشهر كاملا. He said we've seen a rare incident that a woman was on her menses for 1 whole month and she was purified for 3 months straight consecutively. He said these occurs. Those are rare incidents. Those are rare. If they does occur, it's rare, brothers. They usually say, لا حكم للنادر. This is what they mention. طيب, let's go back. How do we divide the woman regarding this? Let's divide them into 5 for this. 5 categories to make life easy, inshallah. Once you have these 5, anyone ever ask you about this topic? And bear in mind, a lot of people, they have a lot of complication regarding this topic. They say one of the most difficult of chapters. Imam Nawawi says, من أصعب أبواب الفقه باب الحيض. It's the most difficult of chapters. And they said about Imam Ahmed that he studied it in the chapter of Hayd 9 years until he understood it, he said. And even in some criticism, we find some of the scholars, they'll critique an individual, they're like, this person doesn't know the fiqh of the ruling of his own wife's menstrual rulings, and to degrade the individual. So it's blameworthy if a person doesn't know so. And also, like some people ask a teacher saying that we're not women, why do we need to learn it? He said also it's important for the men to learn it, as there's a lot of rulings that relate to it for the men. And we're going to divide it quickly, inshallah. Once you have these 5, you can basically use it throughout all of your scenarios, inshallah. The first type of woman on her menses is called Al-Mubtadi'ah. Al-Mubtadi'ah. A woman that is her first time getting her menses. She has a particular ruling. The next one is Al-Mu'tada. A woman, it's a regular cycle. She has a regular cycle and she's waiting for 7 days in this beginning of the month or end of the month, depending on how her regular affair is. The third one, Al-Mumayyiza, a woman, she can distinguish irregular bleeding from her menses by herself. We need to categorize this. These 5 categories are important. We're going to ask the sister, which one do you fall into? She's going to be like, I fall into this category. The 4th category, al-mustahada. Al-mustahada, a woman that has irregular bleeding. And for example, months she's bleeding. So, subhanAllah, this one is mustahada. And the 5th one, the last, which is the most complicated. The last is the most complicated, but some scholars they wrote a chapter, like some of them wrote a thick mujallad just on this 5th one. It's called al-mutahayyira, the confused one. She's confused. She doesn't know. She probably forgot her regular days. She doesn't know when her period is. She doesn't know how to distinguish. She's confused. This one is the most complicated one. There's a lot of questions come from there. طيب, so let's start with the most easiest one. Al-Mu'tada, number 2. What's the ruling on Al-Mu'tada? She basically, the woman that goes with her regular cycle, she just sticks to her regular cycle. We don't tell her to try to identify if it's irregular bleeding, blood of the vein, or is it your menses bleeding. We just say, no, this is your regular cycle, so what is it? دع أيام يعني قرأك, يعني the Prophet said, leave off salat, da'i salat, the days of your regular cycle. Khalas, she doesn't have to do anything else. She tells you, my regular cycle lasts 7 days, we say, okay, stick to that. She has to look at anything right or left. That's what it is, very easy, simplified. طيب, number 1, the mubtadi'ah. The scholars here, some of them differed. Some of the ulama, they say the beginner, because she doesn't have a cycle yet, it's her first time, they say she remains not praying and fasting as long as she still has the bleeding until 15 days. After 15 days, she takes a bath and does her rectal prayers. And this is an opinion in the madhab Imam Ahmad and the Shafi'i opinion, and this is the opinion of the Hanafis and the Malikis. يجب عليها ما يجب على الحائض فتجلس ما دام ترى الدم إلى 15 يوما. What does she does? Can we tell her to sit out of the prayer, away from the prayer for 7 days? She doesn't have 7 days. It's not a regular cycle. She didn't even start yet. So she doesn't have a regular time period. So they say she's trying to identify, so as long as she sees the bleeding, she can go until even the bleeding lasts to 15 days, and after 15 days, she knows, they're saying basically the vast majority of ulama say there's no menses beyond 15 days. So after that, she ends up taking a bath, even if she's still bleeding. The second opinion for the mubtadi'ah, we're still on number 1, is she goes by the adatu nisa'iha. She goes by the regular cycle of her sister, her mother, the woman folk around her. And a woman is not usually far off from them. And this is the opinion of Sheikh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen. Whose opinion is this, brothers? Sheikh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen, brothers. And Sharh al-Mumtaz, some of the mashayikh of Saudi Arabia inclined to this view. She goes with the ada, she goes to the cycle. A woman just started to get her menses, you tell her, follow her mother, follow her sister. That's the easy way out. MashaAllah. So meaning if her mother is 6 days, 7 days usually, she goes for 6 days, 7 days, and after that she starts praying. Tayyib, what's number 3? Which one's number 3, brothers? We're trying to finalize this. We want to take these 5, and after that, if anyone asks you about, you just go back to these 5. So which category do you fall into? Khalas, we'll explain. What's number 3, brothers? Al-Mumayyiza. Oh, this one, complicated one, brothers. The scholars also difficult here. The Al-Mumayyiza is a woman she perhaps has issues regarding the days of her menses cycle. She's having problems with that. She knows she has a cycle, but she's confused a bit. Either she, like they say, she forgot or something like that. So here they say, this woman mumayyiza, she doesn't know her cycle, or she doesn't have a cycle. She doesn't have a regular cycle. It keeps changing on her. But she knows when it's her menses. She can tell by the scent, the color, and the appearance. So they say she goes by identifying it. Basically, her cycle is all over the place. One time here, one time she has these amount of days. It's called mumayyiza, but she knows how to determine when it is. She'll tell you herself that this is my menses, because I know how it is. So a group of scholars say here, she just goes by the discernment, tamiz. She identifies it herself, because her cycle's all over the place. The fourth one, al-mustahada, the one that has irregular bleeding, brothers. A woman, she is bleeding beyond the regular amounts a woman will be on her menses for. Like they say, some of the scholars say anything that's beyond 15 days, and some of them say 30 days. The safest opinion, a lot of the ulama say, 30 days. And our brother Faisal chose this opinion in his compilation he has. 30 days. Anything beyond 30 days, they say, it's irregular bleeding. If it's within 30 days, it's possible. It's up for grab. And it could be menses, it could be irregular bleeding. So basically anything beyond 30 days or 15 days, another opinion, is irregular bleeding. She continues praying. What's the last one? Al-Mutahayyira, brothers. Everyone's scared of this one. This is the one that scholars have written books about. And errors had occurred because of it. The woman that is confused. She forgot, she has a cycle maybe, but she's just confused about it. They differ greatly on what she does in this scenario. Some say she goes and follows the ada of nisa'iha. She follows the regular women folk of her area, when they usually, her sisters, her mother, when do they usually get their cycle, and she follows them. Some say no, she tries to identify the blood herself. Some say no, she goes to the most that the menses could be, 15 days, and after that, she continues praying. What's the strongest view, brothers? Allahu A'lam, mashallah. What do you think, huh? That's a nice view, huh? Allahu A'lam. We'll share the opinions. Like some ulama, like the Hanafi say that she just always follows the cycle of the regular women folk of her kind, and she doesn't go by identifying the blood. But the Malikis knows that she tries to identify the blood. What do we say the strongest opinion again? Allahu Alam, mashallah. This matter requires, like some of them said, المتحيرة هي التي تكون عادتها في الشهر 7 أيام وفي الشهر آخر 8 أيام وفي الشهر 10 أيام. فهذه نقول إنها متحيرة. And because of her cycle changing, it's sometimes she either gets confused or like some of them said, فجلسي إلى 15 يوما. And it's continue until 15 days to be on the safe side. So we're done with that, inshallah. Move on, next line.
فلتغتسل لصلاتها وصيامها والمستحاضة دهرها نصفان. Then she must perform ghusl for her prayers and fasting. And for the woman with irregular bleeding, her time is divided into 2 parts.
Yeah, so فالنصف تترك صومها وصلاتها ودم المحيض وغيره لونان, right? And now this is talking about the rulings of the Malikis, how to identify irregular bleeding from her menses if she's in a state of confusion. Go ahead.
فالنصف تترك صومها وصلاتها ودم المحيض وغيره لونان. For half the time she leaves her fasting and prayers, and the blood of menstruation and other types are of 2 colors.
And what they mean by al-mustahada dahruha nisfani, a woman that has irregular bleeding, they say she's always going to be in a 1/2 pure and 1/2 in her menses. She's always going to divide the month into 2 halves. So even if she has irregular bleeding, we say, khalas, your affair is half of the month you're on your menses. We're going to estimate that. And the other half you are in a state of purity. That's what they're saying. That's her affair. So they're saying 1/2, she is leaving off the fasting, the salat, and the blood of the menses in it is 2 different colors. Go ahead.
وإذا صفى منها وأشرق لونه فصلاتها والصوم مفترضان. And when it becomes clear and its color brightens, then her prayers and fasting are obligatory.
طيب, mashallah. And so basically, if it becomes the vein color of the blood, then her prayers and her fasting is obliged. Go ahead.
تقضي الصيام ولا تعيد صلاتها إن الصلاة تعود كل زمان. She must make up the fasting but does not need to make up the prayers. Indeed, the prayer returns at all times.
Yeah, so when she's on her menses or in the state of nifas, postpartum bleeding, she makes up the fast and she doesn't have to make up the salat. And what's the wisdom? Because the salat is at all timings. So it would have been difficult for her to make it up. Because the siyam is only at once a year, she just makes it up. It's easy for her. Shows you our religion is built upon raf'u al-mashaqqa, removing the burden, brothers. If a person asks you, what's the hikmah? Tell them, this is the ease of the thing. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. One time a woman came up to the name Mu'adha bint Abdurrahman, to Aisha. Says, why does a woman on her menses have to make up the fast but not make up the salat? So Aisha said to her, Aharuriya anti? Are you from the Khawarij? Are you from the Khawarij? Because the Khawarij forced their woman to make up the prayer. They say, you have to make up the prayer. They say, we're being more cautious. You find these type of people. Some people, they tell you, I'm doing this out of more cautiousness. I'm more, on the safe side. We say, no. Safe side is following the sunnah. Don't try to be cautious in places where you're not supposed to be cautious. Those are scenarios where you're going to extreme. Khawarij were known for that. So she said to her, are you from the Khawarij? That's when they're known their sign. That shows you when some people say certain statements of the Khawarij or the people in innovation, you can say, are you from those people? You're speaking like them. I may identify you like them. Oh, astaghfirullah, you're having bad thoughts. No, you're talking like them. What do you expect me? I'm going to judge you based upon your speech. Hold on. So sometimes a person can be held accountable and judged based upon their statements. But yes, you should investigate. Are you from them? Continue.
فالشرع والقرآن قد حكما به بين النساء فليس يطرحان. For the Sharia and the Quran have ruled on it among women, so the Sharia and the Quran are not to be dismissed.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Yeah, so this is the Sharia, this is what he ruled with. إذا جاء نهر الله بطل نهر معقلا. We just say, سمعنا وأطعنا, we hear and obey. Why is this unfair? Why is it? No. There's no room for the intellectuals to come and object. There was a group in Egypt, the people called them Aqlaniyun. They would always object with reasoning to everything. Why do we put the fly, we dip it back in, and why we do the jinn this, and why the night, the dream like this? No. There's no room for your intellect and your reasoning. There's too much why from you. Those type of people, they end up objecting. Just tell them, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It's not befitting for a male or a female of the believers, when Allah and His Messenger rule something, that they have any choice or say in the matter. You just say, we hear and obey. Sometimes the commandment is based on no reasoning. It's just ta'abbud. What's the reason? Because it's an act of worship. That's the reason. What are you going to say now? Khalas. It's an act of worship. Allah is just testing you to see your submissiveness despite it opposing reason. A person asks you, okay, if you're going to follow reason, why don't you wipe the lower part of your khuf? Why do you lower the top part? If you always want to follow reasoning. The religion always based upon reasoning that of goes with the intellect. No. Some things are based upon the text only. It has nothing to do with reasoning. Allah is just testing you to see if you are to submit despite opposing your logic and reasoning. These are people who always come and say, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't make sense. No. You should always submit regardless if you understand the wisdom behind it or not. It could just be merely ta'abbud. Allah made it an act of worship. Go ahead. There's so much things we do in the deen. There's no reasoning behind it. It's just an act of worship. And we do it. Go ahead.
ومتى ترى النفساء طهرا تغتسل أولى فغاية طهرها شهران. And when the woman with lochia sees purity, she should perform ghusl. Otherwise, her maximum period for purification is after 2 months.
Okay, so a woman after postpartum bleeding, well, firstly, damun nifas. How do we identify it? Damun nifas is blood that comes due to giving birth. And they all agree if it's blood that comes after the labor of giving birth, they all agree that is postpartum bleeding. But they differ if it occurs right before the labor. What type of bleeding is that? So some scholars say if it comes with, what's the word in contractions of the labor, then it is, they say like a day or two, and it's connected with the labor, then that takes the ruling of postpartum bleeding. So for example, she's a day or two before give birth, and blood were to come out from her, and she has the contractions, we say you don't pray anymore. This is the fatwa of most of the contemporary ulama, Al-Uthman, most of them. But if the blood were to occur days, maybe 10 days before her giving birth, supposedly, and she has no contractions, she doesn't pay that blood any mind. It's considered to be dam al-fasad, blood of irregular bleeding. She continues praying. And there's a discussion that comes among some scholars. Can a woman that is pregnant have her menses? The Hanafi say yes. All the other scholars say no. They say the Hanafi say it's possible, even though science and some of the doctors oppose. But they said it occurred. And some of the Hanafi say if that blood does come, she would have to not fast, even when she's pregnant. That's what they would say. Allah alam, there's a discussion amongst them. The next scenario is if the blood comes out with the labor as she's giving birth. And the stronger view is that it's postpartum bleeding. And she is going through hours, maybe 2 days, she's in that state. She does have to pray if it comes out blood. Otherwise, she has to pray, they're saying. So what's the most? Well, firstly, what's the shortest? Some scholars say there's no shortest. We found a woman 9 days after giving birth, she was pure. There's even different stories more than that. They mention woman and the short span. Remind me to share that story. There's a story of a woman, the shortest postpartum bleeding period ever. Tayyib. But the longest, the majority of ulama say 40 days and they use a hadith. The Prophet said, كانت نفساء على عهد رسول الله تقعد بعد نفاسها 40 يوما 40 ليلة. She waits for 40 days. After that, she considers it to be regular bleeding and she takes a bath and she's pure. That's the opinion of the Hanafis and the standard opinion of the Hanbalis. The next opinion of the Malikis, which the author is trying to say here, is 60 days. 60 days. I believe also this is Shafi'i's opinion. The most is 60 days. They said they heard of a woman, postpartum bleeding going on for 60 days. She sees the see-through or the clear white thread or like the see-through thread, qasatu al-bayda, or dryness of the womb of 24 hours after 60 days. Is anything beyond 60 days is irregular bleeding. Now, some women, due to how the baby came out, they have excessive bleeding, and that it causes irregular bleeding, and it goes beyond 60 days. Those ones are purified. So let's wrap up quickly, and then we'll take the other topics. We just wanted to after a woman has a dryness of her womb of blood for 24 hours, sometimes a discharge comes out of her. That discharge after purity is not menses. It's not menses. She just cleanse herself and she continue praying. And where do we get the proof of al-qassatul bayda, this see-through thread that comes out of a woman to show that she's purified? A hadith that Aisha said to the woman, لا تعجلنا حتى ترين القصة البيضاء. Don't be hasty until you see it come out. That's where the proof comes. It's a hadith authenticated by Shaykh Albani brothers, reported by Al-Bayhaqi and others. This is where we tell the woman, don't be hasty. If you're regular to see this, wait for it. Even if it takes a little bit longer. We missed something. I don't know what we missed, brothers. La ilaha illallah. We missed. Okay, let's wrap it up. What has precedence? A woman's cycle or her determining the blood, if it's irregular bleeding or menses bleeding? Which has precedence? Huh? عادتها أو تمييزها? Which one? عادتها. She always gives precedence. She says her regular is 7 days. Say, okay, you have to go away from the salat. وَلَوْ كُنْتِ مُتَمَيِّزًا. Even if you're a mumayyiza, you know how to distinguish the blood in yourself. We say, no. Follow your ada, your regular cycle. طيب, which one's precedence? عادة نسائها or تمييزها? Her تمييزها or عادة نسائها? Which has precedence? تمييزها. That's a stronger. If she can identify the blood herself, so that is more has precedence than following your mom's cycle or your sister's cycle. It's good to have these qawaid with us. طيب, a woman that has her menses beyond 15 days on opinion or 30 days, what do we call it? Mustahala. Beyond 30 days by consensus. This is mustahala, a lot of scholars say. After 30 days. And a lot of things that affects the woman's cycles is these birth control pills and these different things, and even the stress of life. All sorts of factors affect her cycle. And nowadays, even the medications, all things could have an impact. So the Shafi'iyya says, أكثر مدة النفاس 60 يوما وما زاد فهو استحاضة. Who says that? The most of the postpartum bleeding is 60 days. The Shafi'is and who? The Malikis. What did the Hanbalis and the Hanafi say? 40. You have to memorize these brothers. These are, inshallah, if anything comes up, you guys get married or a sister or someone, khalas, brothers. طيب, inshallah, I think we'll stop there and we'll move on to the next lines quickly. Bismillah.
مس النساء على الرجال محرم حرث السباخ خسارة الحرثان. Touching women by men is forbidden. The cultivation of bad soil is the loss of both cultivations.
طيب, so in terms of touching a woman, of shaking her hands or touching her, of other than intimacy, whether he says it's for desire or not desire for a shabba, young woman, it is haram either lidatiha or lighayriha. When is it haram for touching a woman in itself? When it is, for example, for desire in a haram way, right away we say that's haram. Without a barrier, for example, he's touching her بغير حائل, direct contact. طيب. And that is with all the madhabs, the four madhabs say that. But when he touches a woman without desire, that is a young woman. It's haram saddan li-zari'a. It's haram for what? To close the door. He said, I'm not touching for desire. Khalas, it's still haram, brothers. She's a young woman, you're closing the door of temptation of fitna. That's all the four madhabs, brothers. طيب, where the differing started? إذا كانت المرأة عجوز, if it's an old lady, they say. And they differ on the age, brothers. طيب. They just said, وَالْقَوَاعِدُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. The women that are no longer طيب of that age of marriage. Where do they differ? I believe the Hanafis and the Hanbalis, they say if the woman is at that age, of elderly age, you can shake her hand. Some of the Hanbalis mention this and some of the Hanafis. And the Shafi'is and the Malikis say no. The Shafi'i only make an exception if there's like if you shake her hand with gloves. The Shafi'is say they're allowed to shake her hands with gloves. SubhanAllah. It can't be direct. Hold on. But what's the strongest opinion? our contemporary ulama, Lajmat Daima said, elderly woman or a young woman can't shake her hands. The Shaykh Abdul he says, even if she's an elderly woman. Some people use an old fatwa of Shaykh Al-Albani. He says if it's an elderly woman, you're allowed to shake her hands. They use an old fatwa. But there's another fatwa of Shaykh Al-Albani. He says no. And he says, لِكُلِّ سَاقِطَ لَاقِطَ. You ever heard that saying? For every scenario, there can be a temptation. طيب. Move on, next line, inshallah. Bismillah.
فتلق ربك سارقا أو خائنا أو شاربا أو ظالما أو زاني. Do not meet your Lord as a thief or a traitor or as a drinker or an oppressor or an adulterer.
طيب. So it comes in a hadith in Sunan ibn Majah that the Prophet ﷺ said, أيما رجل يدين دينا وهو مجمع أن لا يوفي إياه لقي الله سارقا. Subhanallah, brothers. Any man, pay attention to that wording, who takes out a loan, having resolved not to pay it back, will meet Allah as a thief. La ilaha illallah. There even comes a narration of a woman that borrowed something and then yet later on denied it. Some certain wordings that the Prophet ﷺ cut off her hand or treated her as a thief. And some of those wordings. So يُبْعَثُ الْمَرْء عَلَى مَا مَاتَ عَلَيْهِ. The person will be resurrected upon the state he dies. So how you die, perhaps you meet Allah in that state. Go ahead.
قل إن رجم الزانيين كليهما فرض إذا زنيا على الإحصان. Say that the stoning of both the adulterers is obligatory if they commit adultery being muhsan in a state of marital bond.
Continue.
والرجم في القرآن فرض لازم للمحصنين ويجلد البكران. And stoning in the Quran is an obligatory duty for the married, and the unmarried are to be whipped.
Yeah, so now it's talking about the topic of a capital punishment in Sharia law in those countries, like in Muslim government countries. The Khawarij and the Mu'tazila لا يرون الرجم. They don't see it. They're against it, brothers. It's known from them. Ibn Abdul Barr says, وَأَمَّا أَهْلُ الْبِدْعِ مِنَ الْخَوَارِجِ وَالْمُعْتَزِلَةِ. As for them, they don't see it. They say it's not found in the Quran. They even tell you the ayah that was read before, recited, وَالشَّيْخُ وَالشَّيْخَةُ. That ayah, there used to be an ayah in the Quran about rajam, stoning. They say that ayah is no longer in the Quran, so we're not going to do it. It just says in the Quran, in Surah Nur, it just mentions flogging. It doesn't mention anything about stoning. So they say we're going to leave off the book of Allah for a hadith. That's what they tell you. SubhanAllah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, brothers. Umar al-Khattab, he said, I fear comes a time قد خشيت أن يطول بالناس زمان حتى يقول قائل ما نجد الرجم الرجم في كتاب الله فيضل بترك فريضة أنزل الله ألا وإن الرجم حق على من زنى. The Prophet Umar al-Khattab says, I fear comes a time later on that people say we don't find it in the book of Allah, and as a result they go misguided by leaving off something that Allah has revealed. And then he says it's something true, and we did it in the time of the Prophet. And he said, if I didn't fear that the people would say that Umar al-Khattab added an ayah in the Quran, I would have rewrite the ayah back in the book of Allah. In our time we have Shabir Ali, tells you, oh no, don't, the stoning is not from Islam. And some of them even say, stoning is from the Jewish legislation. Islam abrogated, it's no longer part of Islam. Nasakha al-Islam. SubhanAllah. And these people, they give you doubts about these things. And some of these people, they say what the kuffar say. Stoning is barbaric. You tell them, okay, didn't your country some time ago used to do this, went to capital punishment, which was more severe. What your country used to do, yani, which country used to do the shooting, brothers? Multiple people shooting at one time. Which was more severe, brothers? Yani, this is what they used to do. And then they're saying Islam. So we said, okay, were you guys barbaric then? Why is Islam barbaric for us in these scenarios of those countries? And what some of the countries does for their capital punishment, the death penalty is the worst of the worst. They just only talk about Islam. So this is something that comes in a proper way, in Islamic course in those countries, the governments, there's affirmed there. And who are you to come and speak about another country, how they operate? No one came and talk about your history, your barbaric history. I used to deal with some of the prisoners. Should we bring that up in history? And say, what about this? Isn't that barbaric? Were you guys uncivilized then? Admit it, that you weren't uncivilized. If they admit it, then we say, okay, mashallah. One for one, huh? We're both uncivilized then. طيب. Next line, last line.
والخمر يحرم بيعها وشراؤها سيان ذلك عندنا سيان. And the sale and purchase of wine are forbidden. Both are the same to us.
Last line.
بالشرع والقرآن حرم شربها وكلاهما لا شك متبعان. In the Sharia and the Quran, its drinking has been forbidden, and both of them are undoubtedly followed.
Yeah, so it's reminding them there's a doubt. It's a tribute to some of the Hanafis. The Hanafis, some of them, they say if you're in a land where the land of kuffar, of contract, you're allowed to do corrupted uqud. So the uqud al-fasida yujuz fi bilad al-kuffar. So it's allowed for you to sell alcohol. It's allowed for you to do riba. Even one of the muftis of Egypt, in Azhar, they give a fatwa. You can sell pork in the land of kuffar. Because why? They say the contracts there don't count. You can do riba, sell it. You can't buy for yourself, they said, but you can sell it. They say you can sell pork. Oh, you're in the land of kuffar, everything's okay. Uqud fasida on the fatwa Abu Hanifa. And in reality, you go back to some of the fatwa Abu Hanifa, they're not correct. And they try to use an incident, awakening narration that the Prophet allowed the Sahabi Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib to sell riba while he was in Mecca. Or to be doing riba, and while he's in Mecca, they say for that reason, but that is not correct. We've already responded to that. So don't pay attention to these people. A lot of these people, if you see them working at some places selling alcohol or working at the bank, and he's saying, I follow the Hanafi opinion, this is where they get the doubt. Barakallahu feekum. Ustad Ahmad, there's a lot of other side benefits, like one of the scariest affairs, he says here, not to meet Allah as a zalim, brothers, as an oppressor. They say, meet Allah mazluman la zaliman. Meet Allah as a being oppressed and not someone that wronged someone. Wallahi, that day is a day where Allah says, la zulmul yawm. No one will enter Jannah and the other is seeking his rights from oppression. Try to clear your accounts now in terms of any issue that you had with someone. Sometimes you can oppress someone unknowingly. People think, oh no, I had to be intentionally doing it. You could have oppressed him and wronged him unknowingly. It doesn't matter about your intention. You harmed the person. Some people think, I wronged this person, I didn't pay it any mind. No, you'll remember Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ahsahu Allah wa nasu. Allah counted it and you forgot it. So in those scenarios, that's why it's good to say, like the dua of the Prophet, Allahumma ayyuma rajulin sababtu aw la'antu. Any man that I've wronged and cursed and insulted, wronged him, faj'al lahu zakatan. Make for him in return for that oppression some khair for him. Make dua, even for the kafir that you oppress, say, oh Allah, make it a reason that Allah guides him to Islam, or tu'man fi dunya. Don't come Yawm al-Qiyamah and someone's after you, brothers. Someone is after you. Kafir or Muslim. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta